Hey everybody, we're at the CIPD Festival for Work and we're continuing our series of interviews with thought leaders in the industry on AI in TA and HR, and with the one and only Richard Bradley. Richard, great to see you. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself, who are you, what it is you do?
Hey Hung, it's great to be here and thanks to Scotty. I'm Richard Bradley. I've been in the industry for far too long, about 20-25 years. In-house RPO probably is where I'm known most, and have been helping advise various different organisations over the last few years on how to evolve the workplace.
Fantastic stuff. I guess with that line of work now is as busy as it's ever been because artificial intelligence has really just landed onto us over the last 3 years or so, and the transformatory effect on how organizations think about the relationship with workers and what have you is starting to manifest. What would you say we're at? How would you say where we're at with regards to AI in TA and HR?
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating time to be in the industry. Where are we? I think we're still, for the vast majority, in that blind panic stroke discovery phase. I think there is a lot of uncertainty, and I think what we've seen is a lot of pressure on TA teams, and bizarrely I think what we've seen within TA is we've seen a lot of pressure to downsize teams, to become less strategic, become more transactional, when really what we should be seeing is looking at how do we reframe the world of work, how are we going to utilize the workforce, and how are we going to start to hire people differently for different challenges. So I think it's a bit of a dichotomy at the moment, Hung, to be fair. And as a result, if you take the 80-20 principle, I think you've got about 20% of strategic people in TA actually starting to look at this and thinking future forward, where are we starting from, start with the end in mind and look back. About 8% of people are running around a little bit uncertain about where things are going to go. And I think that's causing a lot of nervousness in what is already quite a difficult market.
Yeah, good point. And hopefully it's one of the reasons why events like the CIPD Festival Work are really important, because it enables people to interact with each other and just get a sense as to where the community is. And perhaps that's going to help a few of those 80% move into the 20%.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the talks that we've heard today are exactly around that, where we've heard a lot of people talking about, where the world of work is today. And, a lot of people are effectively saying, well, the world of work is what it is. And what we're going to do is we're going to automate those processes. And what I think you're seeing is a lot of people here coming here and going, okay, well, how are we going to do what we do better? How are we going to do it more efficiently? How are we going to do it more effectively? And that's great. And that's really important. But a lot of the topics here are actually talking about, actually, is the way that we hire and the way that we look at our workforce actually the right way to look at it? And do we need to change that? And that becomes a bigger conversation, which then really elevates some of the conversations we're seeing. But I think it feels to me like there's two tiers when it comes to looking at the future workforce right now.
Yeah, let's dive into that higher tier. What are they talking about when you're referring to these people are looking at reframing so what work is and what hiring is? Can you explain to the audience what you mean by that?
Yeah, of course. So if you think today, like the vast majority of organizations look at recruitment as a linear process. It starts here and it ends there. And it's followed that same process for a long period of time. And the vast majority of people are going, okay, take that process. How do we automate? How do we use AI? How do we evolve that process? What you're seeing with what I call the 20%, and I'm sure there's a different number, I'm just using the 80-20 rule, but that group of people are starting to think to themselves, well, actually, if the world of work is going to change, if we're going to be solving problems that we don't know are problems yet, what type of people are we going to be looking for? So what you're starting to think about is, how do we start to predict the type of workforce we're going to need? Where are the gaps? If we know that we're going to be busy, that our product's going to scale, rather than using antiquated, workforce planning methods, how do we become more predictive, rather than reactive in how we're looking at our talent? Can we start to look at future forward? there's been a lot of talk about skills-based hiring. I think that's now starting to evolve to a point where people are going, do you know what? We might not necessarily know what skills we're going to need. But what we do know is we're going to need people that are agile in their thinking. We know that they're going to have critical thinking skills. They're going to have to be problem skills. So actually, how do we start to look at our recruitment process where we're not necessarily looking just at technical skills? And don't get me wrong, we're still always going to need an element of technical ability, but you're going to need people that are going to be able to think differently and use things differently. And when you start to think about that workforce, you then start to think, well, if we're looking at that, how do we do that? So traditional recruiter jobs are changing. In where you're starting to see is organizations starting to think, well, are we going to need recruiters in the way that we have them today? The answer is probably not. That doesn't mean that there won't be a need for a recruiter, there won't be a need for TA. But what you're starting to see is organizations think more strategically about, well, what is the high touch roles that we need? How do we make AI and tech make humans more human? How do we actually make that human touch and create the availability? What does that look like? So you're starting to see people starting to look about really truly looking at employee experience, looking at candidate experience. And we've been talking about this for years and years. I don't think tech's going to improve that. Tech's going to create the capability for that level of thinking. And that's what I'm talking about when we start to look at what's happening strategically. And that group is thinking very differently about that linear approach.
Yeah, I love it, Rich. I think the main thing I'm getting from you here is that we're going to presume that technology will create efficiencies. It will improve process, radically improve process. And the question is, what do we do with the efficiency gain?
Yeah.
And we need to reapply that time that we save into these so-called higher value, more strategic efforts. Whatever these companies or CEOs have said they care about, that's where we need to apply the efficiency gains that we deliver from, that we secure from AI. A quick word on CIPD before we finish, Rich. What's your verdict on the event? How you felt about it last couple of days?
It's been really good. I came about 2 or 3 years ago. It wasn't as well attended as it was today. I think the quality of the speakers, the quality of the vendors has been really good. I think CIPD have really stepped it up. What I love about it here is it's, a mix of HR, TA, L&D. Really good to get a different view from different people about how it's impacting and how the world of work is changing from a number of different disciplines. So been really, really good.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Richard Bradley, enjoy the rest of the event.
Thanks very much, Hank. It's a pleasure as always.